Well, welcome back to ValueMed and UK drug testing. This is our YouTube channel that we use to bring information to you about a lot of our drug testing kits, new products that we're bringing to the market. And in today's video, we're going to concentrate on one specific drug group. And we'll be using this product to demonstrate how easy it is to detect and measure the incidence of its misuse. And that drug is ketamine. Now, ketamine misuse in the United Kingdom has skyrocketed over the last 3 years. So reports just come out over the last 24 hours about the high incidence and raising incidence of ketamine-related fatalities or drug deaths. That's not just where ketamine has been mentioned on a death certificate, but where the coroner has directly attributed ketamine to the direct cause or causal agent in that fatality. And ketamine use has really skyrocketed in a way that no other modern drug group has. Even if you consider drug groups such as cocaine and the synthetic cocaines, ketamine has really compoundedly taken off in the UK in a fashion that, in a particularly damaging age group, that is a younger demographic, are now using it recreationally as a party drug of choice. The reasons for that we'll come and look at in this video, but the principal reason has to be availability and price. And dose for dose, ketamine is currently at around 1/10 of the cost level in the United Kingdom of the equivalent cocaine. So what is ketamine? I mean, that's the first thing to tackle in any video where you're looking for why a drug group has become so common. And ketamine basically is a veterinary anaesthetic. It's a dissociative anaesthetic, a horse tranquilizer in layman's terms. Its medical use is completely divergent from where it is used recreationally. It's known for its trance-like hallucinogenic effects, and that is the core reason why it has become so popular. It's classified in the United Kingdom as a Class B drug, not a Class A. So Class B, lesser penalties for possession and certainly intent to supply them with an equivalent Class A. But experts are now considering whether it should be actually reclassified as a Class A due to the increased rates of misuse and the severe health impacts that it's starting to have. The alarming surge, really, the most recent data isn't actually that recent. It's from 2023, where an estimated 299,000, just under 300,000 people in the age group 16 to 59 reported regularly using ketamine in the previous 12 months before surveyed. That's not a particularly high level in itself, but bear in mind that these stats are now already in late 2025, almost 2 years out of date. It's typically a very young demographic that are choosing to use ketamine as well. 16 to 24 is the peak incidence or age range for ketamine misuse, and that had risen by 3.8% within that particular age group. So if you take the absolute number of 300,000 in a population of 77 million, but relate it down to a 16 to 24 year gap, and that's just under 4% using ketamine on a regular basis. So quite alarming rates within that certain demographic. Why the increase? Well, touched on that briefly in the introduction. It's a tranquilizing hallucinogen, and the effects of that really make it really attractive to this age group, and it's cheaper than the equivalent hit that you're going to get from either alcohol or the equivalent drugs that are available for them. If you compare its price to, as I say, MDMA or cocaine, it's significantly cheaper and available in higher purity. So the effective cost for your pound spend is perceived as being good value with ketamine. Some people use it to escape some form of emotional or stress-related conditions, but mostly ketamine is taken as a party recreational hallucinogen. Social marketing by dealers makes it even more visible in pubs and clubs, playgrounds, dare I say, across the United Kingdom, and it's now available widely on this illicit black market, being sold to children, young adults, at a very low cost. But the health consequences of chronic and addictive ketamine misuse should not be underestimated. There's a lot of evidence suggesting irreversible damage to the bladder wall and musculature from chronic long-term ketamine misuse. I know this is controversial to claim because the scientific evidence in terms of how prevalent that occurs and the significance of it is lacking currently. But it's associated with various mental health problems, addiction, increased incidence of spiking at parties and clubs. Unintentional consumption of ketamine is something we should touch on, because ketamine, being so cheap and so widely available, is increasingly being used as a cutting agent or a bulking agent for what is being sold recreationally as other drugs will quite often increasingly contain a significant level of ketamine. So there is an element of society and recreational use which is unintentional, if you like to call it that, where they're considering they're taking ecstasy or cocaine and actually they are taking it significantly mixed with ketamine. Okay, so why is testing for ketamine important, and why do we think it should increasingly be part of a panel used for either healthcare screening, but certainly for workplace screening if you are employing a younger demographic? Well, traditionally ketamine has not been a drug group that has been placed routinely into drug cups, saliva or urine drug testing kits. So it's been under the radar, and there is some evidence to suggest that if they consider that it's not going to be picked up on a health screen or a workplace drug test, that is motivational, again, another driving factor for why ketamine is becoming increasingly popular in the society that's taking it. So we are suggesting that ketamine should increasingly be considered as part of a routine panel for workplace and employment drug screening. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate this product, which I don't think is commercially available just yet, but will be on the UK drug testing site later in 2025. This is a saliva drug test cube. It screens for a full 14 drug groups on here. So it's a comprehensive drug screen, and it may increasingly contain some of the newer psychoactive and common recreational drug groups which haven't been included on standard 5, 7 or 10 panels. So let's just run through what we're going to talk to you about on this panel. It screens for amphetamine, which is a classic AMP, speed, benzodiazepines, sedative tranquilizers, which increasingly find their way out onto illicit street use. We're covering cocaine with this. We're covering methadone with the inclusion of EDDP, which is a first-line metabolite and actually is a better quality saliva test for methadone abuse and use than straight MDT or MTD screening. And then we've got ketamine on here at 50 nanograms, MDMA, pure ecstasy at 50, methamphetamine crystallized. Not such a big issue on the drug screen in the UK, other than hardened end drug use. And usually that's something that you'd be aware of in a workplace. But for healthcare screening, and again, this is a multifunctional, multi-purpose panel that we've developed here. Cannabis all the way down to 3 nanograms. Now, cannabis detection in saliva, we've talked about this on multiple occasions, is problematic and difficult to detect. It's basically dependent on getting sufficient cannabis residues that are deteriorating or being broken down, is a better description, from delta 9 to delta 11 cannabis metabolites, oxidized and hydrolyzed. So we've put a really ultra sensitive screen on here to pick up those tiny residues that you'll get around the teeth and gums by using a swab device such as this. And then we've included a 6-MAM detection membrane. Now, the beauty of 6-MAM is it is heroin specific and won't detect all the codeine-based analgesics, painkillers, the mild over-the-counter type cocodamols and those type of paracetamol codeine mixes, which can really be detected and be problematic in workplace screening, because they'll declare that they're taking a codeine-based product. It will test positive on an opiate or an MOP screen, and then you're having to pay for an expensive laboratory test to wheedle out whether it's just codeine that's being detected or whether it's masking an underlying opiate addiction with heroin. This 6-man test on this swab will only detect street heroin and won't detect codeine. And then we've got fentanyl, and we've got K2 synthetic cannabidiol, synthetic cannabis, and tramadol at 30 nanograms. Now, tramadol is an opiate painkiller, but it's not detected on the straight opiate screen. Increasingly used by veterinarians. Tramadol goes in phases in terms of whether it's prescribed in large doses. It's out of favour currently in the NHS, but the vets absolutely love it. And most of the tramadol ending up on the street is through veterinary misprescription or leakage. Let's put it bluntly. That's where most of the UK tramadol comes from. And then you've got an alcohol test on here as well. So it will be supplied with an alcohol read card. Let's pop open one of these and show you the correct technique for taking a swab sample in an oral drug screen. Okay, so inside the packet, what we've got is a clear Perspex double-sided saliva barrel. Okay, it's got some indicative positive and negatives, how to read your test lines on here. And one of the cards in here, the actual strips we'll show you in a minute, will contain the alcohol pad. Inside your foil pouch will be a little bag of desiccant, which is just moisture absorbing crystals to keep this in peak dry condition. It's packed in very careful environmental conditions to avoid any moisture being packed in with it, but the desiccant provides that extra safety. Now, if I peel off one of these two labels, you'll see you've got those abbreviations which we've run through on the front of the foil. So you've got 3 letters for your drug group on each of those strips, and then you've got a control line and a test line. And on some of these you may well have a double test line showing. This particular side doesn't, it's just got single test lines. And you see this little black pad here, if I can get this into focus. You see the pad here under the alcohol, that white creamish pad. That is your alcohol test. That will go a darkening shade of blue if there is alcohol at the time that you do the test. And on the reverse side, again, you've got the C line area and the T line area. And in case we ever load this up with a double T line, a double test line, what you'd see there is the abbreviations on the top being split into 2 drug codes. One would be T1 and one would be T2. This is your swab device for collecting the saliva. It's separately foil wrapped, well, cellophane wrapped. And I'm going to demonstrate this for you this afternoon. You wouldn't normally touch this end before giving it to the donor and asking them to put saliva onto it, but it's rigid and firm, this swab on the end of the stick, and there's absolutely no way currently in its dry format, even if you place it into the base chamber where it discharges its saliva, you can't push that down because it's rock hard, this. Now, before it goes anywhere into the mouth and gets swabbed around to take the saliva sample, the best technique is to ask the donor with their tongue to lick the top teeth between the teeth and the gums, the bottom teeth between the teeth and the gums, lick the inside of the teeth, lick into the cheeks, both sides, lick the roof of the mouth, and lick the floor of the mouth in a lapping motion forward. And what that does is dislodges anything that's trapped around the gums and the teeth and brings it into the pool of saliva that forms in the base of the mouth. And what you then ask the donors to do with the swab is to place that into that pool of saliva, so they're not swabbing around the gums or cheeks with a hard swab. What you're asking them to do is put it into the floor of the mouth and to soften the saliva until they can feel with their tongue that the saliva has been absorbed into the sponge and it's soft and squidgy. So I'm going to do that now, all around and into the pool of saliva. Now after about 15 seconds I can feel that starting to soften, but it takes about 30 seconds to 45 seconds depending on how well they've pulled that saliva. So let's just continue to soften this for that time. Now this is soft and squidgy. You wouldn't normally touch this at this stage. You just ask them to give you the feedback with their tongue. Can they feel that it's soft and no rigidity in it? And if they're saying yes after 45 seconds, you can then ask them to gently repeat that motion with the swab on the stick, very gently and slowly, that they did with their tongue. So top teeth, bottom teeth, inside, roof of the mouth, cheeks, and then just hold it in the mouth for a further 15 to 20 seconds and feed saliva onto the swab. Now this should be completely saturated with saliva. You don't want them to have bitten down on it or pushed it against the teeth or anything. Just hold it in the mouth very gently while you observe them to make sure that you get a good volume of saliva. And then with the chamber in an upright position, feed the swab down into the little ring in the base, align the top and push down. Now, what will happen is the saliva has been discharged into the base of this chamber. It's important at this stage that it's held in an upright position and that you start a timer on a smartwatch or your phone for 10 minutes, which I've just done, because the read time for a non-negative result on any of the drug tests is 10 minutes. In most cases, we can read this drug test as early as 3 minutes because that is the read time for the saliva alcohol test result to be read. Can you see that pink dye starting to flow up through these membranes, front and rear? That's a good sign that I've got a good volume of saliva on the swab and that sufficient saliva should have been collected to run all 14 of these tests. It is critical that you get a good volume of saliva. Inadequate saliva would mean these membranes weren't absorbing sufficient and were looking dry, with maybe 1 or 2 not running at all. Sometimes with these tests, if the mouth has not been particularly clean or got debris in it, you may have some debris blocking one of the flows to one of these strips. Just knock it on a surface. If you can have a look in the base of the test, you will normally see a little bit of saliva flowing around as a good indicator that there is adequate saliva in the test. Can you see those lines starting to form now? You're looking for a test line and a control line, but you must have the control line, which forms near the C area indicated in this results bar. The C line will only form once adequate saliva has run through the entire test, and by 10 minutes the pink background should have cleared to white. So what I'm going to do now is stop this video, pause it, and we'll start showing you the results that we've got on this test barrel at 3 minutes. Well, welcome back. We're now at the 3-minute stage from putting this barrel together with the saliva sampler, and I'm going to read the alcohol pad here. Supplied with the test will be this alcohol read card. Now it's basically a matter at 3 minutes of comparing the color change on that pad to the nearest match on this card to give you a semi-quantitative alcohol saliva reading. You can see mine is that clear white creamy colour for a negative result. If I had alcohol in my system, it would go increasingly dark depending on the concentration of alcohol. So that's read at 3 minutes. But what I've also got on this test is a full set of negative results On this side, I've got all T lines and all control lines showing. And on the alternate side, again, on each of these drug strips, a control line and a clear test line showing. Really nice, clear, dark, strong test lines showing. The test lines will vary in color density and saturation between different drug tests, but this is designed specifically to give really nice, clear, positive and negative results. You can see the ketamine test here, negative by the presence of a control line and a test line. Now, this won't change if we waited for the full 10 minutes development time, but if I had a control line and no test line showing on one of these strips or two of these strips, then it is imperative that you wait for the full 10 minutes for a test line to develop and show. And even a thin and faint test line showing at 10 minutes with a control line above it is a negative result for that drug group. So you must interpret it correctly and not get it the wrong way round. Okay? A really nice, easy to use, very comprehensive, great combination, new product that's being developed to really meet the drug testing requirements of modern workplaces and healthcare, to include some of these newer drug groups such as ketamine and a full ecstasy screen and a synthetic cannabis and fentanyl on a workplace drug test. Because the honest advice we have to give you is industry standard may still be at a 5, 6 or 7 panel screen, but if you don't look for these more increasingly common drug groups, then you will miss them and your workforce will become au fait with them not being tested for and move towards them preferentially rather than the drug groups that they know you have the ability to test for. So a little bit of information that I hope will help you and guide you in terms of where you should be looking, particularly in the light of ketamine being so common in the UK in 2025. Thanks for watching. We'll pop some links to information pages. And also, we're going to be doing a video about the new laboratory screening test that's been updated, basically, again, in the light of the increased incidence of ketamine, but also to screen for some newer substrates or isomers of cannabis, as well as the benzodiazepine groups that are emerging as being more relevant and more important in the United Kingdom when it comes to laboratory confirmation of these rapid screening test kits. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.